Hi, this is Ann from the Learn and Grow educational series, and presuming I can get this mask off of me, I had to run out and do some chores a little while ago. Our water hose broke, a little hole, and I had to go buy another one, so I had to venture into a store. Oh my goodness. Today what I wanted to talk about was something that's been weighing heavily on my mind, something that's weighing heavily on a lot of people's minds right now, with everything that's going on with discussions about systemic racism and police brutality and all of those kinds of things, also in the midst of a global pandemic. So we've got a lot of big issues that we're dealing with in the world right now. And you know, as much as Learn and Grow is about educating people on how to feed themselves, there are lessons inherent in growing your own food that speak to larger issues than that serve as metaphors and examples of other aspects of life where that knowledge can be generalized. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is an appreciation for diversity. And basically it comes down to polyculture and companion planting, that when you have different plants that each have their own nutrition needs and their own lighting needs and their own watering needs, but they nonetheless complement each other within a growing environment. That, for example, the Three Sisters growing method is to grow a corn of stalk and then grow a vining bean plant, so like a climbing bean, like red runner beans or something, and then the bean will climb the corn stalk to get its height. But it won't, as long as you're not overwhelming the corn stalk with lots of beans, then it won't choke it out. And at the same time, you put squash next to the corn and the bean towards the bottom, and it will spread out across the ground. And what that accomplishes is the squash becomes ground cover that protects the roots for the corn, because corn really doesn't, its roots don't get that deep. It's a pretty shallow grass plant. And so it clings to the surface of the soil. So having that squash covering the ground, it acts as ground cover, much like mulch does, and helps trap moisture and nutrients in the soil where they can get to the roots of the corn plant. And then the bean is going to release nitrogen into the soil, which benefits both the corn and the squash. So what happens is you have this symbiotic relationship where the corn provides support for the bean, allowing it to access sunlight so that it can photosynthesize. The bean injects nitrogen into the soil that feeds the corn, and the squash provides ground cover that protects the roots of both and also benefits from the nitrogen from the bean. And so all three of them, working in tandem with each other, create this closed system that keeps a nutrition cycle going and benefits all three species of plant. So when you're doing those kinds of things, you're creating this interconnectedness and this appreciation for the diversity of each plant, that each plant has to be different from the other in order for that symbiotic relationship to actually work. And so when you're trying to explain concepts of diversity to children, and you're using gardening as one of your methods for teaching, that's a perfect example. It is a phenomenon of nature. You've got this continuum, this interrelatedness where everything in nature is connected to everything else. And so when you can demonstrate that with things that just automatically occur in nature, it makes it that much easier to have conversations about diversity amongst the human population. If you can demonstrate that when you put the right matches of individuals together, whether you're talking about individual plants or individual people, however you configure that, you have to take into consideration what are the needs of each, what are the demands of each, and is one going to place an unfair degree of demand on the other? And you look for that equilibrium, that balance where it's a symbiotic relationship. These are concepts that can be generalized across multiple environments with everything that's going on right now, with all of these examinations of all of these systems for bias that have become so inherent in everything that we do that we just take them for granted. Now that we're stopping to take the time to look at these things and go, wait a minute, what are we doing that's reinforcing these inappropriate behaviors, and why don't we have mechanisms in place that reinforce these appropriate behaviors? That kind of symbiosis, that kind of collaboration, that kind of teamwork is really what's been proven to work. it's not even traits and skills, is that they all believe in the end result. You've got buy-in on everybody working towards the same outcome. And so long as you've got everybody invested in pursuing the same outcome, how you get there is less of an issue, and how that labor is divided according to who is more talented at what is less of a concern. That sort of naturally falls out on its own. People are going to go where they have skills that can fill the void, and if you end up with a team of people around an issue where almost all of the holes are filled but there's still some left, then either you need to go find other people or train the people you've got to participate in that aspect of it. There are apps that you can download for your phone that you can use for companion planting that will tell you what plants grow well together, so you don't accidentally put a bad match. So that's not even something you have to memorize or learn. You can rely on the resources that are out there. A lot of the information that's out there to inform any kind of organic gardening function is on the internet. We don't have to become the experts at that. We become the experts at the search engine. Where our expertise lies is in the teaching aspect of it, and using evidence-based practices in order to teach people how to grow their own food. Our expertise is in teaching side of things, less so on the gardening side, though. The more we do this, the more expert at gardening we become as well. And that's the thing. That's what we want everybody to do. That once you get dabbling with it and you get started with it and you're successful with it on a small scale, then eventually you're going to want to make it bigger and make it into something that's more productive. So if you can start even with just a single container, you can grow like a bean plant and a tomato plant. Just to generalize the concepts though, of when you put these diverse things together, they help each other out. To be able to generalize that from what you're growing in your garden to life on the whole, if you're parenting, it's something you can model for your children. So you can first plant your container, say, look, we've got, this combination, these companion plants growing together, they're going to help each other out. Here's how that all works. As it so happens at Mommy's work, we also have a team of people. Mommy serves on a team, and that team is responsible for accomplishing things, and not everybody on the team does the exact same job. But when you bring everybody's efforts together, it's very much like these plants engaging in teamwork and making something special happen, where everybody is able to produce something better than what they would be able to do on their own. If you're doing any kind of K through 12 instruction, then you can also do the same thing. You can say, look, we're going to grow these companion plants together in this container. This is very much like when all the science teachers get together, when we collaborate with each other on lesson plans and how we're going to work together and generalize the instruction across all of our classrooms so that we're not accidentally contradicting each other or working on something that's not going to play into what the other ones are doing. That when we have our meetings, we are doing the same kind of a thing where we're companion planting. We're trying to foster these new fresh young minds into understanding things that they didn't understand before, and it takes a team to make that happen. And here's how all of us each contribute to that process. So maybe one teacher's going to teach biology, and another one's going to teach physics, and another one's going to teach chemistry, but they're all going to touch on how they interact with each other. And if you can make that leap and say, look, the plants are doing that in their container, we're doing this in our instruction. Do you see the similarities? Do you see the teamwork? Do you see how putting complementary individuals together can result in a bigger outcome than what each of them could alone produce? And so that gets kids thinking that way. They start thinking, okay, well, I'm better off collaborating with people than trying to do it all by myself without any support or with minimal support. A classroom is not a place to compete. Learning is not facilitated by competition. Learning is facilitated by collaboration and teamwork. The science is really clear on that. And so for us to try and teach our kids to compete against each other as though there are, only so many opportunities in the world, well, that's just ridiculous. People make opportunities for themselves, and so if you have everybody collaborating together to address the opportunities immediately before them, it also facilitates their ability to recognize the next set of opportunities that are going to come along that will be born of their efforts. We don't live in an eat or be eaten world unless that's the world we create for ourselves. It doesn't actually have to be that way. If we work collaboratively with each other, then that competitive element goes away and everybody succeeds. And so it's a matter of figuring out what's the combination of skills and abilities that need to come together so that everybody's needs get met, that nobody gets left out. And where can each of us make a positive contribution? Where can we each participate as a member of a team where we add value? And finding those kinds of opportunities for ourselves and teaching our kids how to recognize when that type of opportunity presents itself. You're like, hey, I'm a bean and I see a corn stalk and a squash plant over there. I bet if I stick myself in the dirt right next to those two, we'll all get along great and we'll make some amazing things happen. So, I mean, I'm not going to belabor this whole point. I think it's a fairly obvious connection between the diversity of companion planting and permaculture and the systems that happen naturally that control for these kinds of things, that these are perfect examples that we can use to teach our children about the importance of diversity and why homogeneity is actually a problem, that it can create problems. You know, that I've always said that, you know, you don't want to have all of your cabbages planted all in the row, all right next to each other, because that's a buffet for anything that eats cabbage. And that same thing goes for any other kind of planting. So we do it English garden style, where you've got a little bit of this and a little bit of that planted all over the garden. The bugs find one of the kale plants, they don't find the other one. So if I've got to fight the bugs on one kale plant, but I don't have to worry about the other one being infested because they didn't find it, then that's okay. That limits my fight to that one kale plant. And so that's another aspect of polyculture, is that you want to be able to move everybody around and have the diversity of the garden very spread out and intermingled and mixed in with each other, instead of segregated into different sections, like the carrot section and the bean section and the cabbage section and the whatever section. You don't want to do that, because you're really creating a buffet for specific types of pests to come in and wipe out all of one type of plant when you do that. And so if you want to think of diversity amongst people in different workplaces and in different, you know, academic settings and different contexts, it's the same kind of thing. You don't want to cluster everybody who's just alike in one place, because then you're not going to have that richness. You're not going to have that mixture of skills and that mixture of knowledge that's necessary to make fully informed decisions as a group. And so, you know, you can have this one little homogeneous group off to one side making decisions based on their limited knowledge that affects everybody. And we've already seen the consequences of that in our society. We can't be having that. And, you know, we have to have representation from every walk of life and every type of lifestyle represented in the decision-making process, so that everybody's needs are equally addressed. And we can't have one homogeneous group making a decision that affects everybody heterogeneously across the board. And so there has to be heterogeneity amongst our decision makers and policy makers, just for it to work. I mean, that's just a law of nature, as we've seen. And when we can illustrate that through our garden, then it makes that much more sense. I hope that that's been helpful to you. I hope that's given you some added insight as to how you can parent and or teach, and how gardening is such an enormous vehicle for teaching these concepts. And that you'll see that as you move through our Learn and Grow curriculum and look at our K-12 lesson plan, you'll see that our lessons are intended to take the lessons that we gained from gardening that can be generalized to life on the whole, that we try to seize those teachable moments and try to use that as examples and models for our kids, so that they're not just learning the science of gardening, they're learning the science of life. So thank you for joining us. We appreciate you watching this video. If you have any questions, comments, like, subscribe down below or to the side or wherever the buttons are. And we look forward to bringing more to you soon. Thanks so much.